Yeah, so yeah, they always say, "Don't go to Santee, California." I'm like, "Why? What are you talking about?" Because they call that Klan tea. That's like one of the chapters, the main chapters of the Ku Klux Klan. And ever since they told me that, I just unconsciously just would avoid it. But I remember I went to Santee one time, and you know how when you go into communities where people are like, don't go. The KKK's, one of their chapters there, don't go. Oh, nice. Salute to you. Salute to Malaysia. When I went to Santee, it felt like it would be the KKK headquarters, just with the body language, the evil, mean looks, just the bad energy, right? Sometimes it's just the energy of an environment kind of lets you know, like, I don't need to fucking be here. So, again, the KKK has had chapters in nearly every U.S. state. Its strongest bases historically included Indiana, Alabama, Georgia, Colorado, Oregon. All right, Texas, Ohio, and Illinois. During the 1920s, it flourished in the Midwest and the West, not just the South. Today, fractured groups remain in Arkansas, Tennessee, Kentucky, Alabama, Georgia, Mississippi, Louisiana, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Florida, with smaller presences in Missouri, Indiana, and Arizona. Though it has been weakened, the Klan's ideology persists in modern white nationalist networks. All right, so we're going to go over some points, 30 points. All right, in detail. Hey, what's up, Shahai? How you doing? God bless you. God bless you guys. Thank you for tuning in. So the purpose of me doing this series is to, in the scripture, it says, "My people are destroyed for their lack of knowledge." So we have to put this knowledge and this information out there, so that way the Black community, you younger Black people that are growing up, you're not going to get this information in a lot of your college courses. You're not going to get this information in your public institutions, because they don't want you to develop any sort of hatred towards, the dominant society or the dominant groups. All right. So I'm giving you this information. The Lord has blessed us with this platform of YouTube, so that way you can have a place where you can get the knowledge. All right. Yeah, but it says Ohio was one of the locations. So let's start with 30 points in detail on the KKK. Let's kind of demystify this organization. So it says its founding was in Pulaski, Tennessee in 1865. The Klan began as a fraternity of ex-Confederates after the Civil War, quickly turning into a vigilante group determined to reassert white control. Fueled by resentment towards Reconstruction, it used violence to intimidate newly freed African Americans. Its earliest actions included beatings, arson, and murders to stop Black civic engagement. Today, Black communities can strengthen civic education and voting coalitions to prevent fear from undermining democratic participation. So, Reconstruction backlash. The Klan thrived as Reconstruction gave African Americans new political rights, threatening white dominance. Federal enforcement acts briefly weakened them, but once troops withdrew, terror resurged. Okay. This marked the beginning of systemic disenfranchisement through Jim Crow. Today, African Americans can support policies that protect voting rights and ensure federal accountability and safeguarding democracy. So initially, these groups did not like the idea of African Americans being free and included in the population, sort of being reinserted into society, because for them it was a threat to their dominance. Okay. Um, so this was really important to know, because when you're feeling like you're up against negativity, negative energy, and you happen to be in some of these states, where a lot of these KKK chapters and influencers, because they're anonymous, right? So it's not like you're going to exactly know who is who, like who's a part of these chapters, who's affiliated with these chapters. And like I told you yesterday, with hatred, a lot of times they tend to hide, right? In modern times, right? They're hiding behind a keyboard, they're hiding behind brands, they're hiding behind board members. So it's a psychological, spiritual warfare that we're in, because you don't really have a face, like it's a faceless enemy. All right. So the Klan thrived as Reconstruction gave African Americans new political rights. And for them, this was threatening their white dominance. All right. So a lot of the origins and sort of like, the birth of the Ku Klux Klan was out of this spirit of fear of their dominance, the hierarchical power structure sort of like being dismembered or being challenged. All right. So that's why I believe you had a lot of groups like the Black Panthers and, a lot of civil rights groups who grew in strength in response to a lot of these extremist groups, right? They would like you to think that, the Black Panthers was just a group of Black people who got together for no reason, right? They were just kind of all hanging out and was like, hey, man, how do we fucking create the Black Panthers? Ain't really shit going on. No, these groups were in direct response to the threat against, I mean, African Americans are not a big percentage, right? In America, it's not, you would think with all this black and white racism that's going on, and that we're like 50% of the fucking population, right? We're only, if 13%, right? So that's not even including the ones that are incarcerated. Okay. It's not a really big group of African Americans out there. So, a lot of these organizations, these Black organizations grew to respond to not only just the Ku Klux Klan, but other hate groups that were threatening their safety, the safety of their children, their families, right? So let's break this down. So what it says, this marked the beginning of systemic disenfranchisement through Jim Crow. Today, African Americans can support policies that protect voting rights and ensure federal accountability and safeguarding democracy. It's hard to ensure federal accountability. I mean, you can have about 70 to 60% of the Congress is white, right? Most majority of the government is ran by Europeans, and who knows how many of them are tied to the KKK, right? So it's like we could try to keep, still vote, still utilize your voting rights. You got Black people who die for you to have those voting rights. So it's just, when you look at the bigger slice of the pie, it's just kind of like, man, we're up against a lot. So the Second Klan 1915 revival, reborn on Stone Mountain, Georgia. The Klan drew inspiration from the film The Birth of a Nation in nativist fears. So you see this? The Klan, this extremist hate group, sort of like revitalized its identity in response to a film. Okay. So don't ever doubt the impact of the film industry, the movie and entertainment industry on hate groups. All right. Don't think these directors, okay, when they're making these films and they're making these movies, they know the impact it's going to have on the American public. All right. All right, Sammy, thank you for joining me. And I appreciate it. They know the impact that these different films are going to have on, hate groups and extremist groups and different things like that in this country. All right. So there isn't really a divorce between the film industry and sort of like the American ideologies that are sort of like being born in this country, right? These extremist groups. All right. So this film, The Birth of a Nation. So we'll probably do a separate video on that. So it says this wave broadened its targets beyond African Americans to immigrants, Jews, and Catholics. With millions of members, it became a national movement. All right. Today, coalition building across racial and religious lines remains a powerful strategy against extremist groups. Right. So, this film, A Birth of a Nation, The Birth of a Nation, helped spark the revival of the Ku Klux Klan movement. All right. Let's look at The Birth of a Nation. Let's get some information on this film, The Birth of a Nation. Let's see. Let's get some information on this for some of you younger people who don't really know what that movie was about. So let's see. The Birth of a Nation. So it was a 1915 silent film. This landmark silent film by D.W. Griffith depicts the love stories of two families, the northern Stonemans and the southern Camerons. I might be pronouncing that wrong. through the events of the Civil War and Reconstruction. The film is notorious for its racist caricatures of Black people and its portrayal of the Ku Klux Klan as heroic figures who saved the South during the Reconstruction era. Oh, it makes sense why the Ku Klux Klan is coming in like, hey, we got to fucking power back up, guys. This film is bigging us up, right? So it started off as an extremist hate group towards free African American men and just sort of like this fraternity of white people born through Reconstruction who just sort of had like a little gripe about, just the reintegration of Black people into society. And then you have this film, The Birth of a Nation, that just kind of poured gasoline on the fire, right? Like, hey, man, you guys actually saved the day. Hey, what's up, Drip Play? Hope you're having a blessed day. So, controversy. The film was highly controversial from its release, sparking public debate and protests from organizations like the NAACP due to its blatant racism. All right. The Birth of a Nation, 1915. Damn, a 3-hour silent film. Jeez. Let me see if I can get some more notes on this. I've been hearing a lot about The Birth of a Nation. So it says the plot of The Birth of a Nation revolves around two families living on either side of the Mason-Dixon line who become friends when their sons board together at school. The Stonemans, the northern family, live in Washington, D.C. and own a rural gateway in Pennsylvania. The Honorable Austin Stoneman, an abolitionist politician, presides over his family, which includes a delicate daughter named Elsie, a dandy prankster named Phil, and a younger brother named Todd. The Camerons, the southern family, preside over a modest but idyllic plantation in Piedmont, South Carolina, where enslaved people pick cotton in satisfaction and happily dance to entertain their masters. Margaret is the refined older sister, while Flora, the younger sister, is dreamy and innocent. Of the three Cameron brothers, Ben develops into the main character, defending the South's ideal at all costs. His two younger brothers are Wade and Duke. The film is divided roughly into halves, with subsections drawing from a historical chronology of the Civil War. After an initial prologue the, that blames the Civil War and Reconstruction on the introduction of Africans to America. The Stoneman boys travel south during the antebellum period to visit the old pals. Romances develop. Phil falls for Margaret and Ben falls for a the girl type of Elsie. Ben carries the picture of Elsie with him until he finally meets her later. Dr. Cameron reads his family a newspaper article stating that the South will secede from the Union if the North carries the next elections. After the Stonemans leave, war breaks out, interrupting relations between the families. One of Griffith's historical facsimiles are fictional documentations of actual events, which will later include General Lee's surrender and Lincoln's assassination, shows Lincoln signing for the first wave of volunteers. All right. Epic battles follow, spanning 3 years and showing the devastation that war wreaks throughout the country, especially in the South. Exceptionally produced battle sequences focus on both personal details and a bloody scale of depredation. First, a festive Piedmont ball celebrates the South's early victory at Bull Run, and so the three Cameron brothers head off to fight in good spirits. Griffith then spans 2.5 years with one cut, and Ben, battle worn and still in the field, reads letters from home. A predominantly Black militia ransacks the defenseless Cameron home. See, this is where it starts, right? This is where they introduce, the Black man as the criminal, right? And that's where you got this till this day where 60% of films or criminal roles are played by Black folks, right? So they kind of add on to this sort of narration of, the Black man being the criminal. He's the monster, he's the animal. So it says here a predominantly Black militia ransacks the defenseless Cameron home while Ben dreams of Elsie. Tragically, the two youngest sons of each family, Todd and Duke, suffer fatal wounds at the same moment on the battlefield, dying in each other's arms. General Sherman begins his infamous march, destroying Georgia as he moves forward. Wade Cameron dies in Atlanta, and the Union succeeds in pitching off what's left of the Confederacy's meager food supply. As the drama heightens, the two oldest brothers meet in battle. Though Ben's undermanned, underfed, and ravaged platoon cannot possibly win, he heroically opposed the honor of the South. Risking his life and suffering a head wound, he maniacally sprints to the Union trench and jams a Confederate flag down the gullet of a cannon. Retreating to his own trench, he again risks his life to save a wounded Union soldier while Phil's troops cheer. Eventually taken to a Union hospital in Washington, D.C., Ben finally meets Elsie, who is volunteering there. Miss Cameron travels to visit Ben, and upon learning he has been condemned to death under a bogus charge of spying, personally appeals to President Lincoln, who graciously pardons Ben. On April 9th, 1865, Lee surrenders to Grant, and Ben leaves for home. He returns to find his home in disrepair with little food and all the good clothing sold. He embraces Flora. Meanwhile, the elder Stoneman tries to convince Lincoln to rule mercilessly over the vanquished South, but Lincoln refuses, preferring instead diplomatic restitution. 5 days later, Lincoln is assassinated at Ford's Theater, a historical event that is in this movie is witnessed by Phil and Elsie Stoneman, who are at the theater that night. So the director tries to kind of rewrite this movie in a way. He's trying to capture and condense a lot of historical timelines into this film and kind of putting in some of the actors that he created into some of these historical events. Okay, just to kind of make add more legitimacy to the narrative that he's trying to push in this film. All right, the Camerons deeply mourn the loss of their best friend, and Stoneman assumes power, ending the first part of the film on a decidedly bleak and somber note. In Griffin's version of the post war era, all black people who aren't faithful souls team up with carpetbaggers from the North to loot, pillage, and degrade the time honored traditions of Southern culture. So here we go with the looting, right? These looting narratives, right? These black folks are always looting and stealing it. So they were already pushing this back in 1915 based off of this narrative of Griffith. All right, I'm going to say it again. In Griffith's version of the post war era, all black people who weren't faithful souls team up with carpetbaggers from the North to loot, pillage, and degrade the time honored traditions of the Southern culture. Stoneman, champion of black equality in the South, forces Senator Charles Sumner to acknowledge the legitimacy of Stoneman's mixed race protege, Silas Lynch, who secretly lusts after Elsie and is sent down to organize the emancipated slaves. Headquartered in Piedmont, Lynch instigates former slaves to rise up against Southern whites in vengeance. Teams effectively with the carpetbaggers and essentially oversees mob rule. Stoneman, in ill health, visits, bringing Elsie with him. Ben refuses to shake Lynch's hand. The two pairs of interfamily lovebirds try to restart their romance with genteel garden walks, but memories of the war make reuniting difficult. Margaret imagines a picture of Wade laid waste on the battlefield and can no longer speak to Phil. Silas Lynch spies on Ben and Elsie, who eventually succumb to their love. In response to a horrific election day in which Lynch's black supremacists intimidate the whites on the streets and in the South Carolina legislature, right? Black supremacists, right? That's a term. Right? Black supremacists, you know. So it says here, in response to a horrific election day in which Lynch's black supremacists intimidate the whites on the street and in the South Carolina legislature, Ben searches his soul and finds inspiration in white children fighting black children by pretending to be ghosts and hiding under white sheets. The Ku Klux Klan is born. Southern women secretly make hundreds of thousands of uniforms bearing a woven St. Andrew's cross, and the Night Riders start a new war against Lynch's militia. Right, so they're already sort of like organizing these different racial groups and things like that against one another. All right, and they're just kind of echoing and adding on to the narrative through this film. Ben's involvement in the Klan crushes Elsie, but she does not sell him out. Flora consoles Elsie and then skips off into the woods to fetch water from a spring. There, Gus, a newly promoted black officer, approaches Flora and proffers marriage. Flora slaps him, and Gus begins to chase her throughout the forest. Here we go with we got the angry black man and the black guy chasing the white woman, right? So you got to think about these images, and imagery is a big fucking deal on people's mind who may not, everybody's not living in the black community, right? Everybody's not living in the white community, right? So when you're having all this stuff kind of condensed into a film, that makes a big impact on sort of like your interpretation of reality. Film kind of taps into like the unconscious mind, right? You're not really entertaining a lot of this stuff consciously because maybe you don't have these conscious everyday experiences. But when you're getting programmed and stuff, your imagination is just like firing up, right? You're seeing this white girl, white woman running through the woods from this black guy. You're thinking about your mother, right? If you're a white dude, you're thinking about your sister. You're seeing these black people getting bossed around and bullied around by the KKK. You're thinking about your uncle, right? You're thinking about your mom, right? So all this stuff connects through the brain through associations. All right. Film is a very spiritual and scientific, all right, reality, that impacts people unconsciously and their expectations, right? Their belief systems. Okay. So so you got this black man chasing this woman off to the woods. Let me guess, because she didn't want to marry him and she slapped him. So it says, let's say this again. There, Gus, a newly promoted black officer, approaches Flora and proffers marriage. Flora slaps him, and Gus begins to chase her through the forest. Ben follows behind in search of Flora, having been told of her errand. Gus reassures Flora that he intends her no harm, but Flora finds herself pinned on the edge of a cliff. So he has this this black guy got this woman in the film pinned against this cliff, right? So white people are like, "Oh my god, how dare this guy, this nigger, how dare he?" It's already these unconscious associations of black men being aggressive. Black man can't take a no, but all this stuff is being created right through these films. So he's telling her he doesn't mean to cause her any harm, but in the film, she's pinned against a cliff, threatening to jump rather than to be touched by Gus. She's like, man, I'd rather jump off this damn cliff, all right, than to be touched by you, all right. So now that the black man is now the aggressor, right? She says threatening to jump rather than to be touched by Gus. She either accidentally falls or intentionally jumps off the cliff, where shortly after she dies in Ben's arms. Damn. So they showed this white woman, she just jumped off the damn cliff. She's like, I'd rather die than to be held by you or touched by you. All right. Jeez. And then, of course, she falls into Ben's arms. A search commences for the fearful Gus. So the black guy's running for his life. After a complex chase sequence, the Klan eventually catches Gus and lynches him. Of course they do. They dump his body at the Celius Lynch's door. At Celius Lynch's door. All right, that's like the leader. When Lynch discovers the body the next morning, the film's climax begins. The black militia, with its white sympathizers, fight against the Klan. Some of the Camerons are captured, but they are freed by faithful black people. In flight, Dr. Cameron, Phil, and Margaret come across a tiny shack in the woods owned by Union veterans, who invite them in and make peace with the Camerons over their common hatred for renegade black soldiers. Elsie runs to Lynch for help, but he tries to force her to marry him. All right. So another imagery of, brothers forcing, these women to marry them, right? There's this sort of like narrative around black men and women that's been created. And this is back in 1915. All right. So Elsie runs to Lynch for help, but he tries to force her to marry him, promising to make her queen of his black empire, right? When Austin Stoneman interrupts, Lynch confides to him that he wants to marry his daughter. Exposing his own hypocrisy, Stoneman is repulsed. The noble and well supported Klan begins its lengthy and heroic mission to rescue Elsie and the group in the cabin, now besieged by the black militia. So, this is where the Klan is sort of being written and being promoted in this film, The Birth of a Nation, as like the heroes, right? They're coming to save Elsie, right? They're coming to get, revenge on who was that Flora's death, right? I haven't even seen the film, but just I'm a reader, right? I'm a reader nigga, like Star would say. So I can just kind of put all this stuff together. And if I'm not reading it correctly, forgive me, but I just wanted to connect this film, The Birth of a Nation, and how it really fueled that second revival of the Klan in 1915. All right. I'm not going to go through, oh, this is it. This is the last part. Okay. It's not too much of a long read. All right. It pays to read. So So Elsie runs to Lynch for help, but he tries to force her to marry him, promising to make her queen of his black empire. When Austin Stoneman interrupts, Lynch confides to him that he wants to marry his daughter. Exposing his own hypocrisy, Stoneman is repulsed. All right. Out from the black militia. Both couples are restored and united in marriage. White supremacists strip power from black people through intimidation tactics and in a religious coda meant to symbolize the second coming of the Prince of Peace. Jesus and his angels in the city of God stand in approval over the scene. Wow, they even brought Jesus and the angels in the film, guys. This shit is deep. I've never seen The Birth of a Nation. I've heard about it. All right. But just reading it, damn. Can you imagine watching something like that already during a early time in history where segregation is at an all-time high? All right. So now you can kind of get some context into this second revival of the Ku Klux Klan in 1915. All right, from the film Birth of a Nation. I just didn't want it to be a segue. I wanted to actually give you guys at least some context to this film. So, reborn on Stone Mountain, Georgia, the Klan drew inspiration from the film The Birth of a Nation, all right, the power of film. And nativist fears, this wave broadened its targets beyond African Americans to immigrants, Jews, and Catholics, with millions of members. It became a national movement. All right. Today, coalition building across racial and religious lines remains a powerful strategy against extremist groups. So, propaganda through film. The Birth of a Nation portrayed Klansmen as saviors, reshaping public opinion. By presenting vigilantes as heroic, it gave the Klan cultural legitimacy. All right. Propaganda allowed hate to masquerade as patriotism. Today, Black creators can fight back by producing media that uplifts authentic narratives and exposes racist myths, what they're trying to do. So, Stone Mountain ceremonies. Stone Mountain became a sacred site where the Klan fused Confederate memory with white supremacy. Cross burnings and ceremonies sanctified their hatred. This symbol of racial terror still looms large. Today, activists can continue pushing for contextualization or removal of monuments that glorify oppression. I want to say recently they had some type of incident on Stone Mountain some years ago where they were out there fighting. Robes and rituals, white robes and hoods um, anonymized. So they're like anonymous, right? You don't know who's who, right? You got Alcoholics Anonymous, you got Ku Klux Klan Anonymous, right? So don't nobody know anonymity, I'm not going to waste your guys' time. But they anonymized the members, giving judges, police, and business leaders cover to participate. Rituals and titles reinforce loyalty. This anonymity amplified their power. Today, exposure and investigative journalism remain crucial in holding extremists accountable. You don't know who's who. You don't know, and they're remaining anonymous even more because they're like, "Hey man, move that shit out the textbooks, move that out of the history books. We don't want to see that. We don't want to see nothing about Black history." Donald Trump is like, "Hey man, move all that shit out the museums. I don't want to see none of that." Right? But you got Abraham Lincoln monuments, you got George Washington, you got all these other patriots. They're still standing. Right? What's that about? So it says religious cloak. The Klan twisted Christianity into a justification for hate. They branded themselves as defenders of Protestant purity while committing atrocities. This distorted faith empowered them to recruit. All right. Today, Black churches and allies can counteract by preaching true gospel values of justice, love, and unity. All right. Prohibition as a cover. During Prohibition, the Klan presented itself as a moral police force, claiming to protect communities from vice. In reality, they used it as a pretext to attack minorities. All right, this strategy broadened their appeal. The second Klan exploited nativist fears, adding immigrants, Catholics, and Jews to its target list. By expanding enemies, they grew stronger. This made them a national bigotry machine. The Klan reached up to 6 million members at its peak, including many middle-class Americans. This was not a fringe organization, but mainstream America. Its popularity normalized bigotry. All right. So Washington, D.C., 1925. Tens of thousands marched openly in the Capitol, showing the Klan's confidence and reach. This is 1925. Not that really long, what, 100 years ago? Not that long ago, you know. Tens of thousands marched openly in the Capitol, showing the Klan's confidence and reach. Their spectacle stunned the nation. It revealed how deeply hate had embedded itself into public life. Local political capture in towns like Anaheim, California. The Klan infiltrated city councils and school boards. Damn, Anaheim is not even that far from here. I knew it was something about California. Hey, what's up, Rooston? What's going on, man? Good to see you. I knew it was something about California, man. Just like, damn, you don't really hear a lot of civil rights history in the state of California. Where the fuck was California at? With Martin Luther King's March through the street, you had all this Rosa Parks and Malcolm X, all these people. I didn't really get. I'm curious about doing a little bit more studying on California's role in civil rights, right? And it makes sense because a lot of the Klan was infiltrating. They were trying to power up in California. Yeah, she's doing good, man. How are you doing? How's school going? Yeah, my daughter's doing good. She just woke up. Hopefully, I can get through all of these points. So, in towns like Anaheim, California, the Klan infiltrated city councils and school boards. They presented themselves as reformers, all right, while purging minorities. This showed how extremism hides behind civic duty. You say you don't like school, I get that. Klan governors like Bibb Graves in Alabama, Walter Pierce in Oregon, and Clarence Morley in Colorado openly benefited from Klan backing. Their power gave hate a legislative foothold. Politics became a tool for exclusion. All right, so now they're infiltrating the government. All right, which is not never good, right? Indiana and D.C. Stevenson. Indiana's Grand Dragon, D.C. Stevenson, wielded vast power until his conviction for murder and rape exposed the Klan's corruption. The scandal shattered the Klan's moral image. Membership collapsed afterward. Today, okay, thank you so much, man, for tuning in. I appreciate you, bro. I missed you, man. I haven't seen you in a while. Congressional reach. The Klan claimed influence over 16 senators, 75 representatives in the 1920s. See you, Rusa, man. Have a blessed day. 16 senators and 75 representatives affiliated with the Klan. Even if exaggerated, the reach was significant. This showed systemic infiltration at the highest levels. Oregon school laws. Klan backed laws attempted to outlaw Catholic and private schools in Oregon, forcing all children into public schools. This targeted immigrant communities. The Supreme Court struck it down in 1925. All right, lynching as terror. Lynching became a spectacle of racial control. Often cheered by white crowds, this terrorism enforced silence and fear. Its psychological scars endure today. There was just a lynching not too long ago, right, on Delta, Mississippi campus. And Mississippi was one of the states where the Klans had their chapters, right? All this stuff is not coincidence, okay? My people are destroyed for their lack of knowledge, all right? I'm giving you guys the knowledge. I'm giving you the information, all right? So you don't have any excuse. Law enforcement complicity. Police and sheriffs often joined or ignored the Klan. This meant hate had institutional cover. Black citizens were denied protection. Women of the Klan. Women formed auxiliary groups using boycotts in schools to spread hate. They disguised their work as family protection. This normalized bigotry in the household. All right. The Klan used boycotts and pressure to control local economies. Businesses that defied them risked violence or closure. Economics became a weapon. All right. The Klan hired PR specialists to frame itself as patriotic and moral. Newspapers often gave them free plus publicity. Their rebranding campaign worked for years. By the late 1920s, scandals, corruption, and rivalries fractured the Klan. The IRS dissolved its national headquarters in 1944. While weakened, local chapters survive. Okay. The third Klan, 1950s to the Civil Rights era. All right. 1950s, again, this is not that long ago. The Klan resurfaced to resist desegregation, bombing churches and killing activists. Violence surged across the South. This wave proved their persistence. Okay. FBI reports warn of white supremacist infiltration in police forces. This threatens fair justice. The danger mirrors the past. You see this, I'm telling you, you see this still today with a lot of these killings. All right. Even with ICE, right? I wouldn't even be surprised if some of the members in ICE were affiliated with some of these Klan chapters. How they're treating a lot of these minorities and immigrants and things like that. I wouldn't be shocked. All of these all these different systems work together. Don't think they don't. They do. All right. hate ecosystem now. Though fractured, the Klan's ideology lives in modern hate groups. White nationalism and militias carry the same DNA. Hate adapts to new labels. All right. Anonymity as power. Hoods once protected Klan members. Today, it's online anonymity. Secrecy allowed participation without consequence. Fear silence is victim. That's why technology and being online and AI, that shit ain't nothing but the devil, man, because it's just another way for them to kind of keep terrorizing minorities, African Americans, immigrants, things like that, um, without through a faceless tool, right? Through a faceless tool, right? As long as you don't know it's me, and you can't see my face and you don't know who it is, that just strengthens my participation. That just strengthens my recruitment, right? I can tell these people, hey, you're not gonna get caught, man. You're not gonna even know who you are, man. You're a white boy, right? That's why I think that white dude that killed Charlie Kirk, man, he was kind of functioning like a white supremacist or like a Ku Klux Klan member, because what did he do? He ran out the fucking roof, and he probably went out to the public, took off his damn backpack and his leather jacket, and he went and blended in with the rest of Utah, right? It's like shit. Not like he was black as the day, as night as dark. It just kind of stood out, right? He went right out there. They probably didn't even think nothing of it, man. They probably didn't even think nothing of it. Anonymity as power. Municipal capture. The Klan infiltrated sheriff's offices and city boards. This gave them daily influence over law and order. Power was systemic, not just symbolic. The Klan pushed laws and intimidation to control what was taught. They targeted teachers who resisted. Education became a battleground. The Klan justified violence as necessary for social order. Communities were told terror was protection. This warped justice into oppression. Yeah, we're fighting crime. These black folks and these immigrants coming over here, and these women and these Catholics and these Jews. They're a threat. They're a threat to the society. And we got to do all these different. We need this to protect ourselves. This is for justice. This is for law and order, right? The Klan thrived by rewriting history and erasing its violence. Today, memorials and museums counter that erasure. Truth telling preserves resilience. Yeah, so I was able to get through it all. This is just all small little bullet points, man, on the Klan history, for you guys who may not have known, the origin of the Ku Klux Klan, films, and how they played a role in the revival of the Ku Klux Klan in 1915, the power and the influence of the Ku Klux Klan's reach in the legislature, right, in the police force, and the educational systems, right, and how this stuff still echoes till this day. All right. American history, American society that you see today was not born in 2025. We were developed off the heels of our ancestors. All right. And that history is important. That's why Donald Trump removing a lot of the historical references to slavery. It's not just about slavery, it's also about the white sort of like supremacists, nationalists, right? Their role also into some of that oppression, right, and crime that was occurring back then as well. All right, it's almost like an erasure, right, of the violence, just like the Ku Klux Klan was doing. Right, they was rewriting history. Right, in the next 100 years, what we're living today is going to be the history of our children. All right, so if we can erase a lot of that material and information from the museums, then that means my daughter, who's one, she won't think nothing of it. Right, if it's not in the museum, it never happened. Right, so praying for you guys out there that you stay safe. If you happen to be in some of these states where there is a Ku Klux Klan history, and if you're black, be safe and protect yourself. Use this knowledge. Now, I'm not saying go out there and terrorize white people and go be a fucking terror, but just protect yourself. All right. Use discernment. All right. And the Bible says there's a way that seems right to a man, but the end, therefore, is death. All right. So just practice caution and discernment when you're moving around, especially in these times, these really highly charged, politicized, censoring times. Black man, protect yourself. Black woman, protect yourself. All right. But this is a generation where you guys have free will. You do what the fuck you want to do, all right? But just wanted to share this information with you guys. I have to go. I have, to go be a dad. You guys pray for me, all right? I got God on my side, right? God is with me, so I'm not living in fear. And I'm going to keep educating you guys and keep putting this knowledge out here so that way you can use it to protect yourself and better yourselves, all right?